This is the lecture for Making Moral Machines, Why We Need Artificial Moral Agents by Paul Formosa and Malcolm Ryan. So the topic in the lecture, in this lecture is optional. You don't have to know about this or care about this, so the lecture itself is optional. But so this is just to expand on the idea of moral realism, which came up in Wednesday's reading and which also comes up in this reading. So this is just to explain what it is in case you are interested. So they say on page 849, um, first, so the people from Wednesday, Van Wensberg and whatever, and Robbins, they argue that claiming that artificial moral agents would be morally better than us assumes moral realism. And moral realism is, they suggest, very controversial. So what is moral realism? So the moral realism is basically the combination of two claims. So the first claim is that there are right and wrong answers to moral questions. And the second claim is that those answers are objective answers rather than subjective or relative answers. So for the first claim, there are right or wrong answers to moral questions. This means moral realism and other views which say there are right or wrong answers to moral questions disagrees with something that was mentioned in the reading on Wednesday, which is moral error theory. Moral error theory says there is no right or wrong answer to any there's no right answer to any moral question. They're all wrong answers, basically. Like every answer you give to a moral question is an error. So if I say it's morally wrong for a self-driving car to run over a pedestrian in the street, I'm incorrect. That's an error. If I say it's morally right for the car to run over the pedestrian in the street, I'm also incorrect. That's an error. If I say, you shouldn't murder people, I'm making a mistake. Every moral claim is mistaken, so there's no correct answer to any moral claim. So as you can imagine, moral error theory is not a very common sort of view, but there are philosophers who defend it. So moral realism denies moral error theory, but lots of views deny moral error theory. Moral realism adds a second claim, which is that the answers to moral questions, the right answers to moral questions, are objective. And what that means is that they don't depend on what anybody thinks or feels. They're not relative or subjective in the sense that they are the same answer no matter who asks the question. So one good way to understand this is to contrast it with questions about whether food tastes good. So the question, do potatoes taste good? There is a right or wrong answer, but it's a subjective answer. So if I say yes and you say no, we can both be right because the answer is subjective to whoever is giving the answer. If potatoes taste good to me and taste bad to you, then the correct answer for me is yes, and the correct answer for you is no. So some things are subjective, and some views of morality say that moral questions are subjective, maybe to people or maybe to cultures or maybe to whatever. That's one kind of view. Moral realism denies this and says, no, what makes moral questions, or what makes the answers to moral questions right or wrong, doesn't vary from person to person or culture to culture. So if there's some right or wrong answer, it's the same answer in every similar context. So that's moral realism. If you're, the reason this lecture is optional is that, I don't know, unless Winsberg and Robbins are right about this small point. Moral realism is probably irrelevant to everything we've been talking about. Like, whether or not you agree with moral realism has no bearing on anything so far in the class. As these authors point out, they can make claims where there's no assumption of moral realism is needed to make this claim. So, and we actually said something similar to this in one of the first few classes. So it's not like you have to be a moral realist to accept anything almost anybody is saying. But, it's an interesting topic, and if you want to hear more about it, a meta-ethics class would be the one to check out.